what is the difference between a curl enhancing spray, a volumizing spray, and a sea salt spray? Do you need one? Do you need all of them? Do you need none of them? I'm going to be answering those questions along with sharing tips on how best to use each one of those in order to get the most out of them, along with giving mini reviews of each of the sprays that I have. And if you're new here, welcome to my channel. My name is Michelle. I'm a licensed hairstylist with over 20 years of experience, and on this channel I use those 20 years of experience to help you have healthy, happy hair. Let's get started with volumizing sprays. These sprays do basically, as the name suggests, they add volume to your hair. And the way that they do that is they add a little bit of grip and a little bit of grit to the hair, and in some cases kind of encase the hair and just kind of add a little bit of thickening to it. So it'll make the hair strand seem a little bit larger in diameter than what it naturally is. And now all of this is easily washed off the next time that you wash your hair. So it's not something that, as long as you're cleaning your hair, you're not going to get a ton of buildup from it. But it does really help by giving your hair a little bit more oomph. And a lot of times there's some hold to the volumizing sprays as well, and are kind of in that respect a little bit similar to hairsprays because of the adding a little bit of hold with some volume and a little bit of grit and grip to kind of help give your hair some oomph. And they can vary in range from being kind of a softer hold to something that is a little bit stronger. And now neither of these is going to be as strong as a hairspray. And unfortunately, this one I think has been discontinued, so I hesitated to bring it up, but I do know that there are other volumizing sprays that are out there that this one can kind of represent in terms of a little bit more hold and just kind of illustrate that. So this is more for illustrative purposes. I do also have a video where I used this and demonstrated the use of this, and I'll go ahead and put that up here if you want to see that. That being said, I do find that the Rizos Curls Volumizing Hairspray tends to be a little bit similar to this, except for this actually has a little bit more hold. So this combines kind of the best of both hairsprays and volumizing sprays. So this is something that I will also kind of include in this video as well, because you can also use this hairspray the same way that I would use a volumizing spray. So the way that I suggest that you apply this is to spray it at your roots after your hair is completely dry so that you can get the best results from it. So I would recommend lifting your hair up, spraying at the roots. You can even flip some of your hair over and spray, and make sure you're concentrating at the roots. That's where the majority of your volume is going to come from. And also, if you don't get enough from spraying it at your roots, you can certainly then spray throughout the rest of your hair. But if you start at your roots, you can kind of see what you're gonna get from it and then determine if you need to add more. But it's always better to start with the least amount of product that you need in order to achieve the results that you want to get versus just going in and going ham and spraying it all over the place. Your next step after spraying it in at your roots, while it is still dry, I definitely recommend taking the diffuser off your blow dryer. And I know that sounds kind of scary, but trust me on this. Remove the diffuser and then take the blow dryer and aim it right at your roots. And you would kind of flip your hair up like this, and flip it over to the other side, and then flip it forward, and just make sure you're constantly spraying at the roots. Also make sure that you're aiming the nozzle of the blow dryer down your hair strand. So even though you have this flipped up and over, you would blow in this direction so that you're going with the grain of your hair, or basically with the cuticle of your hair, because if you go up against it, it's going to really ruffle up that cuticle, which will give you volume, but also could damage your hair over time. So just make sure that you are pointing it down the hair strand instead of going up the hair strand. But you can rough dry your hair all over the place, flipping it forward, flipping it from side to side, and aiming that airstream right at your roots to really help get a lot of lift and volume at your roots. If you're worried about this causing frizz, I definitely recommend using some type of gel that causes a cast, or mousse that causes a cast, because if your hair's in a cast and you're blow drying it all over the place like that, once your hair is dry, it's not going to cause frizz because the cast is going to protect your hair from that. This AG spray body has more of a softer hold volume, but it still does volumize your hair. And now I don't reach for this one nearly as much, partially because of the softer hold. I do like firmer hold in general on pretty much everything. However, this does still do the job and give some lift and volume. And I do think that this would work really well for people who have very fine hair, that this is going to give you some volume and be light enough to not weigh your hair down. And typically volumizers aren't gonna weigh your hair down, but those of you who have really easily weighed down hair already know that pretty much anything is gonna weigh your hair down for the most part. So trying to stay away from anything that's gonna weigh it down is always a good option. And so something like this that is a little bit softer might work well for you, or for those of you who just aren't looking for something that is just a lot. You just kind of want a little bit of help, a little bit of something without it feeling like you've got something in your hair, or without it being a little too much. And this might be a good option for you. And then now I have the Rizos Curls Volumizing Hairspray here, and this is a hairspray. However, it does also work really great the same way that volumizer does. So I do like to spray this one at my roots and dry it that way, and I get great volume out of using it like that. And so there are some stronger hold ones like that as well. So you could get something like this that is kind of a 2-in-1 with the hairspray and the volumizing, and do that. And then you can put this on both on wet hair beforehand to help with a little bit of hold, to help with frizz so that it doesn't frizz up later when you're spraying it at your roots and blow drying your roots. And then you can do that and get a little extra volume out of it, and spray it completely all over your hair to get volume and also some extra hold. So unfortunately, I don't have too many of these volumizing sprays to really review or go over with you, but there are multiple ones on the market, and I have used them on and off throughout the years as I did hair, and a lot of them just do really work the same way. It's just a matter of finding one that works really well for your hair type, as well as which one is going to be most suitable to the results you're trying to achieve, whether you want something that's a little bit softer or if you want something that's a little bit more firm. Moving on to curl enhancing sprays. These sprays tend to work by having an ingredient or a combination of ingredients in them that really help to perk up your curls, and will oftentimes help add a little extra grip or grit to the hair as well, just like the volumizing spray does. And that's kind of the common theme throughout all of these sprays, is they do add a little bit of grip, a little bit of grit, because actually adding a little bit of something like that will help your hair to have volume and hold the curls a little bit better, because super soft, slippery, extremely healthy hair actually doesn't hold curls very well, and also tends to not be very voluminous. And the reason being is because of all that softness and all that slipperiness, and the cuticles laying basically flat and smooth, or for the most part pretty flat and smooth. The hair just doesn't have anything to kind of hold on to or cause friction for it to kind of fluff up and become voluminous. So these sprays really help with that, and that is their similarity throughout all three of them, is that they do add a little bit of that grip and grit. They just work slightly differently for the results that they create, and because of that, they tend to work a little bit better when they're used in different parts of the styling routine rather than using them at the same times within your styling routine. So with these curl activating sprays, I would recommend using these on wet hair, and I find that the best results with these comes from spraying them on after your leave-in conditioner if you use one, and before you put your other styling products in, and before you do whatever styling it is that you do, whatever your styling technique is. For me, that's brush styling. So if you do rake and shake or just style with your fingers, whatever it is that you do, I find that using a curl enhancing spray prior to that does help the most. And my theory for that is that these, because of the curl enhancing abilities of these, is that when you're putting it in before you're doing your styling process to help your curls to form and to clump and define, that's when these are able to work their magic and help that process along. So these sprays are not going to make your hair curlier than what your hair actually is, but it is going to help your curls to bounce up and to spring up more than what they would without it. And like I said, because of the curl enhancing ingredients that are in there, some of them might have magnesium sulfate in it, like this curl trigger one from AG. That is the ingredient that works its magic here. And what magnesium sulfate does is it helps to temporarily shrink the bonds in your hair, so then that way your hair will spring up a little bit more. So essentially these are kind of helping to cheat gravity in a way by doing that, by helping them to become a bit more springier, bouncier. I keep saying that over and over again, but that's basically what they do. They help them become springier and bouncier, and then they also help to add a little bit of grip and grit so that your curls don't just completely start to fall out and disappear not long after you've finished styling. Speaking of that grit and grip, it's worth noting that because of that, these can cause a little bit of drag when you're brush styling. That being said, these two right here that I use, while I do notice a slight drag, it's not enough to cause it to pull my curls out or pull my waves out. It's just something that I tend to notice as I'm brush styling, that it just doesn't glide as easily, but it's not problematic and it still works really well to help the curls and waves to kind of pop up and bounce up. So I do really like both of these, and I have a review video about the Lanza products right up here so you can see this one in action. And out of the two, I have to say that the Lanza one is my favorite, and I don't even think this one has magnesium sulfate in it, and this one does, and I do really love products that have magnesium sulfate in it, but I like the Lanza one a little bit better for my hair. I just find that this one really helps to enhance the curls a little bit better than this one, but I do know that a lot of people really like this one and get great results with it, and can be a better option for people with really easily weighed down hair than the Recoil Curl Cream, because the Recoil Curl Cream has the magnesium sulfate in it, and this is really great for enhancing curls. But for a lot of people, this can be a little too heavy, and so the curl trigger can be a great alternative. I find that of the two of these, I can kind of feel the grit or grip on this one a little bit easier than this one. And this one leaves my hair a little bit softer, however, not so soft that it's super slippery and everything just kind of falls out. So it does the job without me feeling that nearly as much as this. That being said, this still isn't awful. I would be careful with this one because I think you could probably go overboard on this very quickly and get a really gritty feel to your hair, to where once it's dry, it just feels gritty. And that's not the object. Like, we want to have grit and grip to the hair to keep it from being so slippery, but at the same time, we don't want to be feeling our hair and thinking that it just feels really gritty, really kind of gross, just very producty. We don't want that at all. If that is what you're feeling in your hair, then you've definitely used a little too much, because you shouldn't be feeling that much of it. It should still feel like hair, but just hair that actually has a little oomph to it. And I find with these two sprays, they work really well as refreshing sprays, and I actually like them a lot better than refreshing sprays because they're not sticky. So I don't like the stickiness in refreshing sprays, because when you're spraying it in there, if you're trying to scrunch your hair all up, the stickiness gets on your hand, and then the hair will stick to your hand. So when you move your hand away, you're pulling the hair away with it, and it's gonna actually create more frizz. At least that's what I always find with refreshing sprays, which is why I don't usually like them. But these don't do that. They don't have any stickiness to them at all. And then their curl boosting ingredients that work really well on wash day are also going to work really well on your dry hair on day 2 or day 3 or whatever. And then because they are liquidy and sprays, they're gonna make your hair a little bit wet as well, which is also gonna help your hair kind of revert back to what it was, and also to reactivate some of the products that you already have in your hair. So that is another option for these curl boosting sprays, is that they're going to help give you the curl boosting and curl enhancing on wash day. You can use them as refreshing sprays, and they're going to give your hair a little bit of grit and grip to help your hair hold on to those curls. So these are pretty versatile as far as how many different ways that you can use these sprays. And last but not least, or actually in my case, I think I'm saving the best for the last, is the sea salt sprays. And now the sea salt sprays are going to do, again, something similar to the other sprays. They're going to add a little bit of grit and grip to the hair. They're going to help with some volume, and they're going to help enhance the curls. However, they have one added benefit that the other ones don't, and that is they also add a little bit of texture to your hair that can give you that beachy look, which is why they're called sea salt sprays, or why they have surf spray in the name or beach babe. Is that was their original purpose when this was invented a while ago. I think this one was the first sea salt spray on the market, this Bumble and Bumble surf spray, in the early 2000s. I can't remember the year, maybe 2001, I'm not sure. But I do know that this one came about because when they were doing model shoots on the beach, they noticed the texture that the hair would get after being in the salty air and getting sea spray on it from the ocean, kind of blown into their hair, that it would get this certain texture and it would really enhance the curls, and that like the hair would kind of take on almost a ropey look. And so they wanted a way to be able to recreate that without having to go to the beach. So that's what salt sprays do. Now we're going to talk about when to use this. Now, I find that salt sprays work best when sprayed at the very end of my styling routine. So after I've put in my leave-in conditioner, my curl cream, my whole products, and I would put this in after gel or mousse, whichever one I'm ending up with, and then before hairspray. So if I'm using hairspray, which is pretty much all the time, I'm gonna put the surf spray in after mousse or gel, but before I put in hairspray. I just find that that is the right spot for me to put this in there in my routine. And here's the reason why. I have just spent all that time creating a bunch of definition with my styling technique, and then I put my whole products in there to help hold on to that definition, but also to enhance it because of the way that I put my products in, and also because of the order that I put my products in, that it helps to further enhance the clumping and definition as I go along. So once I've got to the point where I've put in that mousse or gel or both, oftentimes the case, I usually do both, and I've got nice defined clumped curls, putting something like this in that is meant to give me even more texture and more separation is going to help further what I've already created. And this is the spray that I have in my hair today, so you can see what I get as far as definition and texture and all of that. And I have to say, with all the sprays that I have, with all the sea salt sprays that I have, that the look that they create is pretty much the same. So I've been trying out all of these sea sprays on pretty much every wash day. I've used one or the other right after each other. And if you're worried about your hair getting dried out from a salt spray, don't worry about it, because none of these caused any kind of drying in my hair whatsoever. My hair not once felt dry at all. So that is not a problem. And granted, I didn't use one particular product every single wash day. I switched it up with different products, but there's really nothing in them that would make me think that using one every single time is going to make your hair dry, because they absolutely did nothing to make my hair feel dry at all. In fact, some of these made my hair feel really nice and soft and moisturized, but not too soft, because they added that little extra grit and oomph and texture that my hair has definitely been needing lately. And while I think that fine hair, in particular, fine, easily weighed down hair, was most suited to all of these sprays that I mentioned, the volumizing sprays, the curl enhancing sprays, and the sea salt sprays, just because it's really gonna help give your hair a little bit of oomph. But that's not the only hair type that's gonna benefit from all of these sprays. All hair types can benefit from these sprays, all of them, and most especially the sea salt spray, because of the nice fun texture that it adds to your hair and the curl enhancing, and because they also don't dry out hair. So if you're somebody who has drier hair, like what my daughter does, you can still use a sea salt spray and not have to worry about it making your hair drier. So I'm gonna go through each one of these sea salt sprays that I've been trying out and talk a little bit about them. Not a whole lot, because I don't want this video to be 20 hours long, and also because they do give pretty much the same look and for the most part, a very similar feel. However, there are some sprays where I felt the grit a little bit more than other sprays. So that's mostly what I'm going to be distinguishing or talking about when I talk about each of these sea salt sprays. So I'm just going to start with the surf spray because this is the original, the one that started it all. And it also happens to be one of my more favorite ones. And this is because I feel like for me, this gives my hair a little bit more grip and a little bit more grit than the other ones. Again, not dry, not at all, but just a little bit more something. And my hair still feels really good. It does not feel super gritty. It doesn't feel gross. It doesn't feel producty. It feels really good, but it's just giving my hair that little extra added something. And I just feel like this one is the one that gives me the most of what I'm looking for with a sea salt spray. It's also worth mentioning that these sprays can be used on anything from straight hair to curly hair, whatever, anything in between. They work really well for all of that. I used this surf spray on my older son's hair, whose hair is pretty much completely straight. He's got like what I would call a natural twang, where it's not straight enough to be completely straight, but it's not wavy enough to be wavy. I'm not one who believes in the whole 1A, 1B, 1C. Either your hair is completely straight and it's straight, or if it has a bend in it, it's not straight anymore. Like, you wouldn't call a road that has a bend in it a straight road. It's a road with a bend. So I'm gonna go with the strict definition of straight hair, which is straight. Anything after that has some type of curve or bend to it, and that's what it is. It's hair that has a curve or a bend to it. Or to just sum it up nice and neatly, I just called it a natural twang when I was doing hair. When I was still behind the chair, that's what I always called it, was a natural twang. So to get back to my son with the natural twang, I sprayed on a little bit of the sea salt spray. He absolutely loves it. So I gave him half of this. So I poured some of this one out into a different spray bottle and gave this to him, and he's been enjoying this one as well. He just likes the extra added texture that it gives his hair. And he sprays it on his hair when it's dry as well, which is another way that you can use the sea salt sprays. My daughter also uses it on her second and third day hair or whatever as a curl refresher, and she just sprays it on and gives it a scrunch. I've done that as well. I really like it. It's worth mentioning that if you're gonna use it on drier hair, you're gonna feel that grit a lot more than if you use it on wetter hair. So this can be used on wet, damp, or dry hair at any point in your styling routine. I have my favorite spot where I like to put it, but it can be used pretty much anywhere depending on how you do your hair. However, the drier your hair is when you put it on is the more grit you're going to get out of it and the more texture you're going to see. So when you're putting it on your dry hair to refresh, you're going to see a lot more of that beachy, textury effect. Textury? I don't know. Anyway, you're going to see more of that beachy texture effect by putting it on drier hair. So, but that can be a fun thing for when you're doing your refreshing in between wash days, is to just play around with the beachy sprays instead of expecting your hair to go back to the way that it was or trying to get it to go back to the way that it was. If your curls are stretched out or your waves are stretched out, just go ahead and spray on some beach spray, give a little bit of scrunch, and let it be a little bit more messy, beachy, kind of looking like you just spent the whole day oceanside, even if you live in a landlocked state. Just go with it. Do something a little bit fun, a little bit more different. These are great for that. But anyway, to get back to my mini reviews, so this one, like I said, gave me a little bit more texture, and the InnerSense I Create Waves also gave me a little bit more texture and a little bit more grit. And I would have to say that this one could be a little tricky for some people because it is highly concentrated, so you really have to be careful on how much you use. And also, like I was saying earlier, the drier your hair is when you put on one of these sprays, the more you're gonna feel that grittiness in your hair. So if you're interested in this one, and if you're worried about the grittiness, or you want to keep the grittiness, that feeling, down to a minimum, then make sure you're spraying it on your hair when it's wetter versus drier. Or maybe even just avoid this one altogether if you really don't want to worry about feeling that grittiness. But this one tends to do it a little bit more, I have to say, than some of these other ones that are here. But it does do a great job of creating that beachy texture and that look. So it's a really good spray as well. All of these are a really good spray. I'm going to keep saying that throughout the whole thing. I'm going to try not to say that because they're all really good. I actually really like all of these ones that I have purchased and tried. So I'm just going to throw that out there right from the beginning that all of these are good. All of these I would recommend. I think they're really great sprays. It's all down to a matter of how much of that grit and feel to your hair that you want. The next one is Eva NYC's Lazy Jane Salt-Free Wave Spray. And this one says it texturizes, tussles, and enhances waves. And it definitely does do all of that, just like all these other ones do. It does create that texture, and apparently it does so without any sea salt. And this one, again, is not drying at all. I have to say this left my hair feeling softer than some of the other ones. So if you're somebody who has really, really soft hair and you're trying to not have that soft hair, then maybe you might want to pass on this one and get one of the other ones that leaves a little bit more of that grit, but it still does a lot of the same things. And I found this to be a really good product, and it makes me want to try some of their other products as well. This is the first one that I've tried from this line, the Eva NYC. I've never tried any of their other products, so I might have to give those other products a try because of how much I really like this. So great for that textured look without adding too much of that grit. Next we have Redken Beach Spray, and now this one I kind of find in between those two. So it doesn't feel like it has as much grit as the first two that I mentioned, the Surf Spray and the Innersense I Create Waves. And it doesn't leave the hair as soft feeling as the Eva NYC. It's somewhere in between those, but it does all of the things that all of the sea salt sprays do. It gives you that beachy texture. It gives you a little bit of oomph, a little bit of volume, and it does so without it being as gritty as some of the other ones, but not as soft as the Eva NYC one. So it's somewhere right in the middle of all of that. And again, it's a great quality one. I gave about half of this to my son, and he is enjoying it quite a bit on his hair. So one of the things that I find is really weird about this one is that it's a little bit thicker and kind of has like a milkier type look to it, whereas the rest are all pretty much watery. And this one, you can kind of see that it's got kind of a milky look to it. But that milkiness doesn't really seem to change how it performs in relation to some of the other ones. It's just something worth noting that I thought was really interesting that they have it in there. But yeah, another really good one that doesn't dry the hair out, has kind of a medium level grit, and gives really great texture and all the good things. This one you'll notice is missing quite a bit. And this is my daughter's personal favorite. She really enjoyed this one. She didn't like the Innersense one nearly as much, and she loved this one. Now, as I mentioned, her hair is on the drier side. This one was her favorite because of how moisturized it left her hair feeling. However, it still did all of the things. It added the texture, it gave the beachiness, it did all of those things, and a little bit of grit and a little bit of grip, but it did it with adding a ton of moisture for her hair, so she really liked this one. That being said, I also really liked this one, and my hair is overall pretty healthy, and it is soft and slippery, and it doesn't really like a lot of heavy emollient ingredients right now, and it tends to get a little over conditioned very easily, and I didn't feel like this over conditioned my hair at all, and yet it did all of the things that I wanted it to do. So I think this one is, I don't know what magic they put in here, to be quite honest, because I feel that this one is pretty universal for both those people who have the drier hair and also for those of us who have the super soft, slippery, healthy hair that kind of sits there and doesn't want to do anything. And I feel like it works really well for both. And she also found this one to be a really good refresher spray. And like I said, she's used about half of a bottle. And if I hadn't asked her for it back, she probably would have used the whole thing. Next up, we have Salty by Xmondo, and this one is on the more moisturizing end, the more softer end. So even though it does provide the grip and grit, it has less of that. So it is more similar to the Rizzo's curls than the Surf Spray as far as grit level. It's on the lower grit level, and it does leave the hair feeling pretty soft and moisturized, but yet still manages to provide all of the good things that you want in a sea salt spray. So the curl enhancing, the texture and the grip and grit, just not a ton of grit. So if you're trying to avoid that, but you want the volume, the grip, the grit, the texture, and you want more softness, then this would be a good choice for you. This next one is a bit more budget friendly, and it is the Not Your Mother's Texturizing Beach Babe Sea Salt Spray. This one also has UV protection, which is wonderful. I'm all about UV protection in products all over the place. If you can find a styling product that does the things that you want it to do and has UV protection, that is a huge plus in my book. And as far as the grit factor on this one, I'd have to say that this one is more medium. It doesn't have quite the amount of grit as the surf spray. However, it does have more than some of the softer ones that I mentioned. It doesn't dry your hair out. It does give, some nice beachy texture to your hair and some curl enhancing abilities. And it also makes a great refreshing spray. But if you're looking for something that gives a little bit more of that grit and grip, you might want to try some of the other ones that I mentioned, because this one is more in the middle. Last but not least, we have the Verb Windswept Waves and Light Texture Sea Spray. Why do these names have to be so long? Like, I wouldn't have to turn it around and look at it if they weren't so long. I'd be able to remember it. So as far as grit level on this one, I have to say that this one is probably not quite medium, but also not quite at the same level as the Bumble and Bumble Surf Spray. And now when I'm talking about grit level on here, none of these are super gritty to where you're just gonna feel like you have, sand in your hair or something, or just really producty hair. Unless, of course, you went a little overboard, then you might feel that on your hair. But none of these really give that. It's just, I'm kind of comparing it. I'm talking about these grit levels in comparison to each other. Not that this one is terribly gritty and this one is not. So I find that this one has a little bit less grit and grip than this one does, but it's not as soft as something like the Rizzo's Curls or the X-Mondo Salty. So somewhere in between there, but closer to the surf spray end of things. And this one does all of the things that the other ones do. It gives the texture, it gives the curl enhancing abilities, it gives the grip and grit and gets rid of the slipperiness, and it works really great as a refresher as well. So it does all of the things. It's just this one is a little bit higher up on the grip factor in relation to the other products that I have here. And if you're wondering if I have a favorite, I don't really have a favorite right now. I've just got done with the whole testing process, and I really only tested these like maybe 1 or 2 times each. And after the testing phase, I did kind of reach for a couple of them a little bit more often than I reached for the others, but that doesn't mean that's always going to be the case going forward. But the 2 that I reached for the most since I stopped testing all of them have been the Bumble and Bumble Surf Spray and the Verb Sea Salt Spray. And the reason being, as I just really have liked the grit level that it's given my hair. I do want something a little bit more further up the grit scale and giving me a little bit more texture, and I feel like these 2 do that for me a little bit more than the other ones do. So a couple of these sprays have definitely inspired me to try more of the line that they come from, and that is the Bumble and Bumble Surf Spray. I'm really looking forward to trying more of the surf line and playing around with those products. They have another spray, they have a mousse, and something else I can't remember, but I really want to try that out because I'm really enjoying the texture that I'm getting from all of these sea salt sprays, and I really like this one in particular. And then the other one is the Eva NYC, which has definitely inspired me to try more products from Eva NYC. I feel like they're affordable and good quality, so I'm looking forward to seeing if that carries through the rest of the products that they have, so I will probably be checking those out as well. That brings me to the end of this video. Hopefully you found this video helpful. If you like this video, please go ahead and hit that thumbs up, and as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.